Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm very pleased to pick up the theme that my colleague Phil Twyford has put before the House this afternoon in respect of a pattern beginning to emerge in respect of environmental policy through this government. And noting just yesterday, Minister Smith announced the National Policy Statement on Freshwater Management. And that was a statement that was looked forward to with enormous anticipation, I think, by anybody with an interest in the environment in this country. It was obviously brought together under the process of the Land and Water Forum, a very good Scandinavian model. I applaud the Minister for setting that up. But there's enormous disappointment emerging from some of the members of that forum because they are looking at that policy just as they've looked at the shape and form of the Environment Protection Agency and asking what has happened, where has the driver of good, sound environmental policy gone, because there are just so many bits missing that deserved to be there. And in respect of that National Freshwater Policy Statement, for example, while we see that councils are supposed to bring in and implement the outlines of that policy statement over the next 3.5 years, there's actually an out clause, and that is if they find it impracticable to meet the deadline, then they have another deadline, and that deadline is December 2030. So if you're looking to that document as an example of this government delivering on environmental outcomes, you'll be waiting a long, long time before you began to see the final results of those environmental changes. And it is paralleled by the lack of any clear commitment to environmental policy and the objectives of the EPA. And that's why I support and applaud the amendment proposed by my colleague Charles Chauvel to actually give this organisation some real function and form that relates to environmental policy and objectives and isn't just a bland assertion of bureaucratese. The other parallel, I suppose, I'd like to draw in respect of the National Policy Statement on Freshwater and this EPA bill is around the weakening that's gone on between the versions. And the basis of this EPA bill comes out of the much vaunted National Party's blue-green vision for New Zealand 2006. Well, it is something of an oxymoron, because one of the things I've learned as Labour's water spokesman is, in fact, the most toxic of all the algae that you'll find in the now polluted riverways of Canterbury is a blue-green algae. It is the toxin, that cyanobacteria, that forms the matting on the bottom of the rivers, and if dogs go in and eat some of that matting, they will die. They will die. So in many rivers in Canterbury, it's no longer safe to take your dog down to the water, and we were looking to the EPA as a watchdog on these issues, and we were looking for the National Policy Statement on Freshwater Management to be a new tool, a powerful new tool, which the EPA would be able to have some role in administering and enforcing, but I'm afraid that both of them are weaker. And let's look, for instance, between the original version of the MPS on freshwater, which required that conditions imposed on all discharge permits be imposed by councils on all discharge permits affecting freshwater, so as to protect the environment. Now, what do we see in the version delivered by the Minister yesterday? Simply requiring councils to have regard to any adverse effect. You could not get a blander requirement of a council in terms of it taking a role in enforcing water quality than that. And the Minister's hiding behind the idea that there's ultra vires legal opinion. I haven't seen that tabled yet. He's indicated he might table it at some point if somebody doesn't say no to that. Welcome that advice. Welcome to see that advice. Minister, you need to find a way to give that National Water Policy Statement some teeth. There is no point having something which simply is wishy-washy, which doesn't put any onus on councils. I note the irony also that just over a year ago in this House we were in 30 hours of legislation passing the Environment Canterbury Act, which did away with the councillors for the original Council of Canterbury. Now, I must acknowledge with this bill, at least of this Environmental Protection Authority, we are taking it under the normal passage. Mr. Chair, we are taking it through the normal passage of Parliament, and I welcome that. That I must say is an advance. But if we go back to the Environment Canterbury deconstruction bill, I think it had another name, Protection of Water Bill, I think it was called, an oxymoron in itself. That was because the councillors in that regional council were not delivering effective water policy in that region. So we now look, and of course they argued very strongly that they had great difficulty enforcing water policy because there was no national framework underpinning what they were trying to do. And the Minister claimed that they were the only council that didn't have a water plan. That's not correct, Minister, because Environment Southland didn't have its in place until April 2010, exactly the same time as you were saying that Environment Canterbury was the only one that didn't have a regional water plan, so that wasn't correct. But anyway, here we come to the situation now where we are seeing the requirements about taking charge of water quality being handed back to the regional councils without an underpinning framework. So what does that mean? Does that mean if councils decide to be good environmental watchdogs, as I think Environment Canterbury was attempting to do, belatedly, admittedly, after some gold rush went on for the water resource of Canterbury, does that mean that they are now likely, if they get too vigorous in enforcing the environmental side of the equation, are they likely to face the same fate that we saw happen to Environment Canterbury? Because it's being sheeted to them that they're going to have responsibility, but there's nothing underpinning them under the National Water Policy Statement that gives them the basis of making their decisions. So we've got neither fish nor fowl in respect of that National Policy Statement. And it's a bit like the EPA in that respect. It is an agency which is created without actually a proper goal and objective. It doesn't actually state that it's there to protect and enhance the environment. It's actually formed by an amalgam of existing government agencies. Most of the staff will come from IRMA and from climate change and from the fast track mechanism that EPA already embodies. There is nothing that I see to suggest there will be any staff there to enforce issues like improving water quality. And the Minister made much noise today and yesterday about the big increase in funding for improving water quality, $7.5 million a year increase. Whoopsie-doo. But at the same time, $500 million of money is being created to facilitate irrigation projects. And of course, some of those projects are likely to come to fruition before the several long years, the Minister has indicated, when we will see actually the new environmental rules that he still heralds are coming. It'll be several long years, he says, but some of those new schemes funded by the government's $500 million of largesse will actually come into play, and they'll not be being required to meet any tough new requirements. So we will actually see a further deterioration, I suspect, in water quality. That's not even counting the schemes that are already underway, such as the Darfield Fonterra plant. And I think there's a view in the industry that if they can push ahead, get some new production in place before new rules come in, well, that's what they need to do. And I think they're being encouraged by a cabinet cabal. The Minister is not part of that. He's clearly lost the arguments, both in respect of the National Policy Statement on freshwater management and in respect of the EPA, because this is not the bill that was intimated. It is not the bill that was indicated. It does not deliver on clear goals and objectives to improve the environment, as one would have hoped. I'm glad to see we are picking that up, and I'd hope that we might get some support for an organisation having some environmental goals and objectives as enshrined in the amendment from my colleague Charles Chauvel. But it is truly disappointing that we are here passing this bill. It's not delivering the environmental gains or will not deliver the environmental gains that we were hoping for from it. It actually is a watered-down agency. It is an amalgam of existing functions. I would like to ask the Minister if, for instance, we're going to see any staff in the regions. I think to date, one in Canterbury was about what it was projecting to have. Are we going to see any actually staffing out in the regions enforcing issues like water quality, like air quality, like environmental risk management, or are we going to see a Wellington-based bureaucracy which is going to be small and tight with no objective and no real capacity to improve on the environment as enshrined supposedly in the objectives of this bill?
Nicky Wagner.
Thank you, Mr Chair.